One thing that is inevitable, and I think everyone is getting to see this in the real time, you get to realize that 1 year ago we had economics professors that were warning people that our life is going to be so much hard, and the times are really getting darker, 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 darker. In today's video, I'm hosting Ray Dalio. He's going to talk to majority of people from the United States, the UK, and generally the world, trying to warn especially the Western world and how the times are really, really getting bad, and everyone should brace themselves for the worst that is coming. Honestly, I don't think this is fear-mongering, but I understand people have their own ways of surviving through these harsh economic conditions that people are having. But you'll agree with me that the times are really tough, and the more time is going and is the more it's getting more darker. And so I invite you to watch this video by Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is American economist, American billionaire who has predicted structures that has made him successful, and he sees how the times are really going to be so much tough for everyone. I'm not a professional in this, but what I like about this is just sharing with you what people say about this. Also, I'm not any advisory expert or anything. What I do is just share information and try to make people understand this in the most simplest way as they can. So watch the video. I'll be back and then I'll be sharing my thoughts in regards to this. But at the end of the day, let me see you after the video.
Let's say. And the five big forces are, there's a money, debt, economy force, okay? Debt's their spending power. So what happens is when you give somebody credit, they can spend. But it also produces debt. And debt has to be paid back. And so what happens is if there's not enough income to pay back the debt, then you have debt rising relative to income. It squeezes out spending. People don't want to hold the debt assets and so on. The UK is going through that and has gone through that, and it's connected to the second force. And we're all going through this in varying degrees. The second force is the internal political and social force. In other words, like between the left and the right, with wealth gaps and opportunities gaps. We have big wealth and opportunities gaps. So when you have big wealth and opportunities gaps, there's conflict. Conflict between the left and the right. And when you get to the situation where you don't believe the system is working for you and you don't trust the system, then there are wars, there are internal conflicts over that and so on. So the third force is the geopolitical force. In other words, there's a cycle that usually goes from one big war to another big war. So the last war ended in 1944, and we began a new order in 1945. And the way that works is that the winners of the war determine how the world order works. They draw borders, they say, here's how it's going to work, and that's the new order. Okay. And that continues until there's a rising power challenging an existing power in the existing world order, which typically is deteriorating at that time. And then you have international conflict. Okay. These orders, there's a monetary order, they all break down. There's an internal political order, they all break down. And there's a geopolitical order. They all have this conflict, and they work together. The fourth force throughout history has been acts of nature. Droughts, floods, and pandemics, for example, have killed more people than wars. And acts of nature. Nature has a big effect. And then number five force is man's inventiveness, particularly of new technologies. Okay, because if you see that inventiveness, that has raised per capita incomes, GDP per capita, any measures of the living standards over a period of time, and so on. But it is also related to the first four that I said. Those four forces interact. Now, when we go back to your UK case, okay, they have a financial problem. They and almost every country now is dealing with more of that internal political problem. For the same reasons, wealth gaps, opportunities gaps, what do we do? Who's got the power? I don't trust the system kind of thing. Okay, number three is we are certainly in an international great powers conflict, right? And it certainly affects Europe and the UK as we're dealing with not only the Ukraine situation, but the Russian situation. And what does that mean? And that relates to the money thing because, okay, where's the money coming from to have defense or military expenditures and so on and so forth? So that matters, right? The geopolitical matters. Climate certainly matters. And then, of course, technology and inventiveness. So everything could be looked at through that lens.
And so what does this mean for the UK if all other countries are going through this as well? Doesn't that just mean that all countries are going to suffer equally?
No, because they're not all equal. Okay. Some are more in debt than others. Okay. Some people are more willing to hold their debt than others. Some means they have more resources. Some are bigger and more powerful. Some are less powerful. They're different. Okay. They're all in different conditions. Some countries have surpluses. Some countries, are not in the middle of where there's having a war.
Are you optimistic about the future of the UK at the moment?
No.
Because it has high debt, it has the social internal conflict, it's affected by the geopolitical factors, and in terms of inventiveness, it doesn't have the culture that other countries have, like the US. Is that?
Yes, the culture and the capital markets to support that at a scale that it needs to be supported to play seriously in the game.
And for anyone that doesn't know capital markets, mean basically the investor markets is a way of saying.
Well, I mean, it gets you the money. In other words, you're a guy behind, what happens is we have to enable people. Okay. What works is finding great people, talented people, and identifying those who you want to bet on and enabling them. And that works. That's the most important force, much more important than money. Okay. Because you could see who's got the money and power and where did they come from? Where did NVIDIA come from? Where did they all come from? Okay. They're guys like you, entrepreneur in a sense, who's been enabled. Okay, because you have the talent and people want to bet on you, and that's the capital markets. So they give you money to help enable you because they want to bet on you, and then good things happen.
But are you optimistic about the United States at the moment?
The United States is very much a big picture. No, I think it's very much in this issue. So if I go down my list, it definitely has this debt money economy problem. We can get into that. Okay. It definitely has the internal conflict power in which there's a fight between the left, the hard left and the right due to wealth and values gaps and people not believing that the system will work for them. And so democracy is at risk because they don't believe this. They're not going to follow the rules in the sense they don't believe the rules are going to. Number three, it's of course the leading one side in this great power conflict of the world, right? In other words, yes, between the United States and the one side, let's say, and China and the allies, their allies on the other side. I mean, in the news, you just saw the meetings of Xi, Putin, Modi, and that group over there walking down, and okay. So now it should be pretty clear how the sides are lining up. Okay. It's always better to be in a place that's not in one of those wars. Like, stay out of wars. And of course, climate has an effect. And of course, then we have technology. The United States and China are in the big technology competitions. The others are really not in the game. They don't have the money, this innovation and talent, in a sense, to play at that scale and so on. So we have a great, technology war, which can be used to create great advances, but at the same time could be used for great conflicts. And so now the question is going to be who wins the technology war, because the winner of the technology war is going to win all wars. Okay. In other words, they'll win the economic war. They'll win the geopolitical war because technology. And I'm not saying anything that hasn't repeated through history.
Give me that historical context if you can, just for people.
The technology, for example, nuclear.
Yeah.
Nuclear won World War II.
And does this cycle go back further than just...
Oh, no, it goes back. That book, okay. In order to understand these things, because I have to bet on what's going to happen, I'm a global macro investor. I studied the last 500 years of history, and it happens over and over again in all cases. So I could take the British Empire. I could take you through all the empires, the Dutch Empire before that, and all this, and it happens all the time.
I watched your videos about this, and it was truly fascinating how predictable this stuff is, and the work that you've done to uncover this trend throughout history. I mean, it's almost, for me, it was almost irrefutable watching the evidence in I think it's like a 40-minute video on YouTube where you show how this is played out through empires. And it begs the question, because when you live in the United States, when you're in the present time, you almost never assume that the empire you're in could fall. You don't see how it could happen. We're so strong. We're so great. We're so that doing AI over here, have money over here. Everything's good. The sun's shining. It's inconceivable.
Of course. People always think that the future would be a slightly modified version of the present. And it's not. Okay, watch over decades. But it's like watching a person grow.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
You watch your kid or you watch a person at your age, any age.
My parents.
And that's what you see.
Yeah.
Okay? And you don't see the life arc.
Yeah.
Okay, but the life arc is irrefutable.
But do you think it's conceivable that in the next 50 to 100 years, the US could no longer be the dominant power globally?
Yeah. Yeah, more than conceivable.
More than conceivable. What do you mean by more than conceivable?
I mean that these evolutions always take place, and they take place in a certain way, and that if you look at the probabilities and the paths and the symptoms, there is a challenge the United States is facing, a number of those challenges. And we're at a moment where it's a question of whether the system and the people can get control of the situations and deal with it strongly and well in a way where they are not fighting to the point of damaging each other and damaging the prospects for the future.
But I mean, the United States is very innovative. Got all these great innovative companies here, so surely...
Yeah, but you can't make generalizations about the United States, and you can't make generalizations, by the way, about the markets either. What you see is 1%, a small percentage, 1% of the population. If you're looking at the breakdown of incomes and also you're looking at the innovation, the stock markets, which stocks are doing well, who owns those companies, and all of that, about 3 million people in a country of 330 million people are really unbelievably doing great. And you could pick the neighborhoods they're in and what they're doing. And then there's the top 10%, let's say, which is the people around them, and they're really, really doing great in that world. At the same time, the bottom 60% of Americans have below a 6th grade reading level.
Wow.
And that population, in terms of the basics, being productive, you have to be productive and be prosperous. So what you need to have a successful society is to have broad-based productivity and prosperity. Okay, and that's a problem. Okay, so which America are you looking at? And are you watching the war that's happening between these?
It's a little bit complicated for me as a bit of an outsider, because I see Trump saying he represents those people. But obviously Trump is from the billionaire class himself. So, I mean, is he a savior for inequality? Is he correcting inequality?
I think he sees a lot of the problem, and I think he sees the debt problem. I think he sees the internal conflict disorder problem, and I think he represents let's call it the red states I mean, you look at a map and there's red and blue and you see where they are, okay? And he represents that and they're united behind him in terms of doing some things, okay? Mm-hmm. So he represents, let's call it the red side, which is located where the map shows red, and then there are the blue. And he views himself as somebody who needs to take charge and to do certain things. Others in that population would say those who, let's say, are having the food stamp program cut off or having other programs cut off that they're dependent on would say, wait a second, that's not representing me. And so that population has gone to significant number behind him that are devotees. They're all in. Okay. At the same time as we have the other side, which will have their devotees. If we're in New York City, okay, and the upcoming mayoral election will be an example of the two sides, okay, and they will try to use the system, but there's a question: will the system have enough support to work? Okay, but that's what we have.
Just to close off on this point of the UK in particular, if you were to try and fix it, what would you be aiming at? I say this because we do have a millionaire exodus that's widely reported in the UK, where I think this year we're set to lose roughly 16,000 millionaires. When you look at the big countries like China, America, the UAE, the UK, we're losing more millionaires than anybody else. And I was wondering if you think it's fixable, and if you were in charge of the UK, what you might aim at first.
Mm-hmm.
It's different,
First of all, if you go back to the basic problem, which is there's too much debt, there are deficits, there's differences in education and opportunity levels, and so on. The most important thing that you can have is a strong middle.
Political middle,
to be analytically strong and also strong enough to get the people to do what needs to be done, even if they don't want to do it, to get to be productive. Now, that's an easy thing to say. It's not an easy thing to do, but you do need that strong middle, and you do need to convey to people that you need to have this strong middle to change productivity. And, and are you in it? Are you in it? Are you patriotic and in it? And, but you look at history, how did the United States come to be the United States? People will go to the places that are better than them than stay in the places that are worse for them. This is fundamental, right?
Incentives.
Okay. Yeah. So you have to make the place better. Okay. Now, I would say also you can take pockets and they go into the pocket and let it spread out. But you also have to have this equal education, or, you've got to strive for equal opportunity. But anyway, it's a difficult question that I'm afraid I'm incapable of solving.
It was unnerving to hear the tone of your voice drop when I asked it. You seemed slightly as if you've kind of given up on the UK a little bit. Your facial reaction.
No, I'm a practical guy. I'm a realistic guy. I made my money. I'm in the business, and it's my nature to try to be realistic and to bet on how things will transpire. And that's not healthy. The situation in the UK is not healthy. And the situation in the United States is very risky in many ways. It's what we're describing. So, and then if you look, where are people going? Then you see the places that have the qualities we're talking about. They're civil. They're creative. The people aren't at war with each other.
What happens next in history?
Well, usually there's a big fight for control.
Political revolutions and things like that.
the system breaks down because they don't trust the system. So will the legal system resolve that? Will the parliamentary system resolve these disputes satisfactorily to the satisfaction of those people and the other people who have different points of view? And the sides won't believe it. And this goes back to Rome. It goes back to Caesar, the Senate. And this goes back through history all the time, right? In the 30s, 4 major democracies chose to be autocracies, okay? That happened in Italy, Germany, Spain, and Japan.
What's autocracy for anyone that doesn't know the word?
Well, it means a dictatorship, essentially, of a limited number of people at the top who are autocratic, which means that they are directing things rather than a democracy in which there's representatives of all different points of view that get together and follow rules to make decisions.
So the UK could become an autocracy, as could the US, I guess.
You're going to see a lot of pressure for that strong leader who will get control of things and make it work well. And you're likely to see 2 different views as to which side, the red and the blue sides, so to speak. You're likely to see that type of clash.
You said the US is playing a risky game itself. Is that from a debt perspective or otherwise?
Well, from these things,
okay.
From the debt, from the internal conflict, from the changing world order, the geopolitical world conflict. I don't know, we're playing with nuclear weapons and, in wars in different places. And then, of course, climate, and then the technology war, how we're doing that,
I saw that image the other day of Putin and President Xi in China together, walking together. If China does become the dominant force in the world, the dominant power, is that a smooth transition? First
of all, I don't think either side is going to be the clearly dominant power for a very long time. And the quickest way to have it is some kind of a war, and that's a dangerous thing. But maybe it evolves, hopefully, the way the Soviet Union evolved, that the worry of mutually assured destruction keeps everybody not having that kind of war. And then the systems, one system or another system, wins. But that's an evolutionary process. And, I can't say
Do you think much about timeframes? Because when I was going through the changing world order, there seems to be somewhat consistent or predictable timeframes when these transitions happen. Do you think about where we are?
Well, they're long-term big cycles,
yeah.
Right? It's like a life cycle. On average, they are about a life cycle, about 80 years. But it's not predetermined, just like your life cycle is not predetermined. Like if you take care of yourself, and don't smoke, eat well, exercise, and so on and so forth, then you will probably have a longer life cycle than if you don't take care of yourself. And it's kind of like that, and so you see them in history, they evolve, but you can see the symptoms. Okay, you can see the actions and the symptoms, which, like taking a physical, then gives you a sense of where they are in their life cycles.
We're 80 years from World War II.
80 years from World War II, yeah.
And you're seeing the symptoms?
Yeah. Symptoms are clear. They're all in that book. You can see the charts of all the systems.
Is it something to be worried about or concerned about if you're in the United States?
No shit. I mean, yes. And then the question is how you as an individual handle it.
How do I as an individual handle it?
Well, first of all, I think you have to be aware of the situation and the risks.
For me and my family, though, in terms of risks and how I should counteract those risks? Is it a case of me saving for a rainy day? Is it a case?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
There's a saying in Hong Kong, a Chinese saying, which is a smart rabbit has 3 holes. And what that means is you can see, is it the UK or the US? And I can then move to the better place and get out of the place that's a terrible place. So can I successfully be an immigrant or whatever and change my location? Throughout history, that's been important. So the ability to go to good places and away from bad places. So that's part of it. Secondly, building your financial strength is important, which has to do with how you earn, spend, and save. That will determine the amount. And then what you do with that amount is invest. And so how you invest is also important. So if you have your financial ability and you can make the move, and then you have knowledge, about what's happening so that you can change things. Those are the things you need.
So on that first point about a smart rabbit having 3 holes, is it therefore a better decision at this point in time to not buy a house? Because a lot of people end up buying a house and it anchors them to a place. And it means that they then have to pay into a mortgage. So a lot of the financial advice most of us have growing up is when you get enough money to buy a house, move in, pay that mortgage for 25 years. But if I'm in a new economy, in a new world, and flexibility and the ability to get up and go and move is there's value to that.
The ability to move capital matters. And if you look at history, this has been an important consideration. Yes, so it matters. So if you're nailing yourself down and that's your primary capital and it's nailed down there, then does limit your flexibility.
And on the point of earning, spending, and saving, I wondered what you're a father, aren't you?
Yeah.
What advice are you giving to your children about earning money in the current world? Where they should set up their shop, the skills that are most valuable to acquire, the technologies. We talked about the US being one of the better places to build your career for all the reasons you described.
Well, that's kind of like the particular that you asked me for that's below the level of the higher level. Okay. The higher level is I have a principle. Make your work and your passion the same thing and don't forget about the money part. Okay. If you make your work and your passion the same thing so that you're really enjoying your work, you'll have an enjoyable, satisfactory life, and you'll probably be better at your career. That, as a result, you probably advance and so on. So you have a happier life, and you will have probably a more successful life. But it is true that the careers that you choose will have financial implications. Mm-hmm. And if you say, I want to be a poet or something along those lines, you better consider the financial implications of that. That doesn't mean that you have to go make a ton of money, because I think a lot of people fall into that trap, that they think the money is like vast amounts of money is vast amounts of success. And that's not true. In other words, is your work and your passion the same thing? So I think that what brings people happiness is meaningful work and meaningful relationships. Okay. If you have meaningful work, that you're into and your passion and your work's the same thing, and you have meaningful relationships, whether through that work or beyond, you're going to have probably a great life. Okay. And so you have to keep that in mind. And it doesn't have much correlation past a certain level of money. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have much correlation with that well-being, with the amount of money you have. And if you see studies across societies, and you'll see that past that certain basic level, there's no correlation between the amount of money they have and how much happiness they have or well-being. Okay. That the highest level of correlation across societies and studies of happiness and well-being is community. Do you have a sense of community? Do you have those around you who are your community? You'll live longer that way. You'll have a more joyous life and it'll be a better outcome. But anyway, so thinking about those things, I think, is important.
Based on your life cycle in this book, Principles, Your Guided Journey, Create Your Own Principles to Get the Work and Life You Want, do you think you have to play different games in different seasons of your life cycle as it relates to generating wealth? And what I'm talking about here is really like risk profile, or what I should be optimizing for. Should I be trying to hang around with Ray Dalio, or should I be focusing on the job that pays me the most?
First of all, the answer is yes. And the second question you asked, the answer is that you should be around the people who are the best people to teach you, to operate by the mentors and the learnings and so on. You should be around the best people. And when I say best people, I mean people of good character and good capabilities. Okay. And so you should be around the best, not the job that pays you the most. And I could explain why that is. And yes, in terms of that arc, you will play it differently at different parts of your life cycle. So in the early part of your life cycle, what you're going to do is, the more learning and experiencing is the most important thing that you can do in the early part of your life cycle. It's like you're going to make your choices. What direction am I going to be in? And so on and so forth. So learn. Okay. That's most important. And then what you're at the end of your life cycle, you're pretty much relieved from all of that. You're not going to be working to earn. Okay. You're going to be free of all of that. You're going to have, and you have freedom of choices and so on. And you're going to be thinking about transitioning. How do I transition well-being, or how do I transition my wealth, or how do I transition and so on? That's where you are. Still, learning is a joy, but at the same time, in terms of trying to accomplish, it's not the same at your late part of your life cycle as it is in your early part of your life cycle.
So I want to ask about your early life cycle and what the most important strategic or wealth-generating decisions you made that you would encourage everybody to consider if their nature is aligned to yours.
Okay. My nature was I hated school. I didn't like the whole thing of remembering this and then give it back to me. And there were these, history like there's William the Conqueror in 1066 and what did he do? And, like all of that was what education represented. And when I was 12, a kid, I earned money with odd jobs like I had a paper route and I mowed lawns and I caddied.
Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you're doing great from wherever you're watching us. Right. We are in those harsh periods in the United States, the United Kingdom, and some professors will tell you that the United States is through its last capitalistic stages, and what means that this is full blown, right? There's so much evictions that are happening. There's so much prices of goods and services are so much high, and people are really struggling even to get 2 meals in a day. And I think it's only fair that we realize that this is happening in real time. And while I was watching this video, I was so much interested also in what people had to say in regards to this, because you realize that when the professor's explaining things, but people in the comment section keep saying what's happening to them in actuality. Right now, we're not talking about theories. We are talking about things in real time that are happening to the people of the United States. And you get to see how life has changed. And at least everyone is recognizing that it's getting tougher and tougher. Indeed, it's in harsh economic conditions. This is a huge recession that people are in. And so I had interesting comments in regards to this that I really wanted to share with you. The decline is coming sooner than we all think. Now, if as many 60% American adults are already read below a 6th grade level, it is hardly surprising that Ignorance has found fertile ground in the country. While low literacy does not equal to stupidity, it is undeniably creates an environment where nuance is drowned out by catchy slogans and complexities easily sacrificed for spectacle. Um, he goes ahead and explains that in society where critical reading and informed analysis are uncommon, ignorance is not merely tolerated. It is often celebrated. Layer on the amplified power of social media, a culture of anti intellectualism, and the rise of celebrity driven politics, and you have a nation where folly is not only but visible but disturbingly venerated. And somebody intrigued to this replied because you understand that people don't appreciate education, especially in the 21st century and its place today. People are having different views of what success is. And the Western world has a different view about education. And the level of reading of people it's also becomes different. And so when we are having the last stages of capitalistic conditions, we see where people are starting to leave education. People don't take education as something which is primary. And so you get to understand how all these things happens. Now, somebody also shares that as a 64-year-old female, I chose to own in on the sage advice of pain, reflection, progress. Learning this recently had a profound effect on my life. Instead of feeling helpless, I now feel empowered and a lot more confident and happy. Right. Somebody also says that young people in Nepal just banned the communist parliament banned the Hilton Hotel and dragged out political figures. They also stormed into the arms of billionaires who have profited of them getting poorer and poorer. Makes me wonder about the abuse we have taken in the West. Somebody's also saying that what he says about being open to question and researching your own opinion or decision is so true. It is what is currently leading us into crazy situation we find ourselves. Social media is feeding people more and more of their own biases and reinforcing their opinions to such an extreme degree that they won't even consider other opinions or other options. Somebody's also sharing that as a 40-year-old trying to balance raising a family while navigating financial uncertainties, the reality hit home. Hearing Ray Dalio breaks down cycles and how to prepare personally gave me a sense of clarity I've been missing. It reminded me that even though times may look dark, the way I adapt and stay flexible will matter most. This is exact the perspective I needed right now. And that's really right, because you need to find a way of adapting through all this crazy stuff that is happening around the world. Now, somebody's saying that Dalio's wisdom on accepting reality, dealing with pain through reflection and meditation, and the importance of hard work and open-mindedness are invaluable. It's a reminder that while the world is facing huge challenges, we can still navigate them by understanding the bigger picture and focusing on what we can control. The idea that we need to be like smart rabbit with 3 holes and be prepared to move ourselves and our capital is incredibly practical advice for anyone feeling uncertain about the future. Somebody's also saying that his book Principles was amazing. Sometimes we stumble across quotes that really strike us. And I remember one sentence in particular that went something like, whatever you do, you need to have an advantage. If you don't just do it by simply believing you are better than others. So true. Like you want to open a restaurant because you enjoy cooking at home, but you've never been a high-level manager in one or a professional chef. Since I read this book, I've lived by that quote and only starting where I have an objective advantage compared to, others. Somebody also said that I'm hearing more and more financial influencers saying not to purchase a house as it's financially better to rent. I think this very depend on the country in which you live and in your stage and your life stage. Living in Australia, renting is usually more expensive than a mortgage, but more importantly, finding a rental is often impossible. And once you've got 1 year contract, it is usually for a year. For a year, then it's uncommon for the owners to sell or raise the rent. It's stressful and uncertain process. Owning a home is much less stressful, especially for families. Makes sense. With where you are located or where you are. Somebody also says that I find Dalio to be a very generous man. He could have passed down the wealth of wisdom and knowledge, all the books he wrote to his family and great grandchildren, yet he chose to share it with the rest of us. Many of us might have mentors, teachers, or parents who teach us these things, so I'm grateful for his generosity to educate us, right? It's so much important to have people that shares all this information. Okay, somebody also said that your audience include a 60 not interested in business at all, just living with a retired husband on a fixed income, taking care of 12 acres we own, and taking care of elderly parents in their 80s across the road. Why do I love your show? You are an awesome human being, curious and always wanting to improve yourself, working on keeping open mind. I really appreciated your interview with Gawat. It helped me to really be present with what matters most right now. You was already encouraging about having conversation with the AI. It's amazing. So I think this is really, really important for us to talk about everything that is happening today. Also, somebody talked about something important that I want to share with you. Somebody said, I never had money growing up, just constant stress about bills, arguments, and being told, end quote, we can't afford it, end quote. Honestly, I thought something was wrong with me until I stumbled across Nixoria's books. The moment I started reading, I felt this anger rise, realizing I'd spent my entire life kept clueless about money on purpose. It really felt like discovering a secret I wasn't meant to know. I'm still shocked no one's banned this yet. Really, really important books to read that will help you and change your life. Something about young people. To all young people listening, do not get swayed by the pessimists on the media. They will make money regardless, but you will lose big money and opportunities if you adopt their pessimist worldview. Keep believing, keep learning, keep earning, keep investing. Do not lend your mind to pessimists. Very nice. So I think that's really, really important information to share with everybody. And so please let me know what you think about this video. I hope to share it with you and I hope you find value in the comments that everyone shared and what everyone said in regards to this. Until then, let me see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salut.